Saw friends, it's me, Matt. Welcome back to Hobby Vomit. Today, I'm doing my first book review. So, bear with me. I I don't know exactly how this is going to go. I've kind of got some outlines. At this point, you'll probably have seen Ian's review of Mistborn. So, there'll be some similarities there as far as what our rating system is and all that, but as I make more book reviews, I'm assuming I'll kind of fall into more of a groove. So this is a little more free form. So let's get into it. What am I reviewing? I am reviewing Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie, the book that Bree and I just finished reading together. If you watched my last weekly retch, you already know that I love it. So not gonna hide that. But yeah, so this review is going to have a spoiler-free section and then followed by spoilers. So I'll let you know before I go into spoilers how that's going to go. If you've not seen Ian's review, we have come up with a nice little review system for the channel called B.A.R.F. B.A.R.F. stands for. So let me give the pitch here. I've got my notes pulled up here. Let me see. So B.A.R.F. is believable. So essentially, how believable are the characters in their setting? That's B. A is appeal. How interesting or appealing was the book? R is rhythm. So how was the pacing and the plot structure? F is feeling. So how did it make me feel? Did it make me feel anything? And then we've added a little S on the end for B.A.R.F's. But the S is really just a score and then a sell. So like we pitch it. So what I'm going to do in this review is go through B.A.R.F. and I'll do it spoiler free. Then I'll give you my score and my pitch, and then I will go into spoilers. So let's start with B, believable. So let me pull up my notes. My non-spoiler score. So I'll give a score for each one of these. My score is a 5 out of 5. I think the characters are top tier. I think this is Joe Abercrombie's strength. I think their motivations feel real. I think their arcs feel good. I think the conflict feels real. The dialogue is excellent. I just think this is one of Joe Abercrombie's strength, and it really shows here. Great characters and great dialogue. So that's just my spoiler free. I'm gonna try and keep spoiler free fairly short. So that's believable. 5 out of 5 for me. Next is appeal. How interesting was the book for me? My score was also a 5 out of 5. So this was pitched to me as fantasy Kill Bill, as someone that loves Kill Bill and loves fantasy. I think that is the perfect. Forgive me if you hear my cat. He's yelling. Yeah, it's fantasy Kill Bill. It really is. It's a revenge tale. I think what made this even more appealing for me was that it's a revenge tale with a motley crew element. So the main character, Monza, she gets a crew together, and that really elevates it for me. I think some other things are appealing. I think the humor's excellent. Another one of Joe Abercrombie's strength. He's not trying to add a joke in every paragraph or anything like that. It feels very natural. But man, some very funny moments in this book. And then the other thing that is appealing for me is that he's got pretty well-written action that doesn't overstay its welcome. Action for me as a reader is I'm a character-first reader, and sometimes books will go into these 30-page action sequences where, yes, there are stakes, but I'm not really invested in the actual action. And I think Joe Abercrombie does a pretty good job of this. It seems like once a book, there's a longer action sequence that I'm like, when I finish it up, I'm usually like, that could have been half the length, and I would have been okay with that. So, I knocked it a little bit. Mostly though, the action's pretty precise and very well written. So my appeal score is a 5 out of 5. Rhythm, 5 out of 5. I think it's extremely well paced. It's broken down into different parts, and we also move across the country within each of those parts. So in each of the parts, the main character is going out to it's a revenge tale. So she's getting revenge on different people. Each part of the book is in a different part of the country, getting revenge on a different person. And so I really liked that. I liked that we moved from area to area with each part. It felt like it kept it fresh, the setting. I also think it had a great plot, even though I put great plot, even if not original, with an ending that pays off. And yeah, the fact that it's pitched as fantasy Kill Bill, it doesn't really have that much originality to it. It's just a revenge story. I think adding the Motley Crue does help a little bit, but yeah, it's not, I don't think you're going to read this book and be like, wow, he really brought something new to the table. No, but I think he executed it perfectly. And I do think it has a satisfying ending. So that is my rhythm score of 5 out of 5. And lastly is feeling 5 out of 5. So yeah, if you watched my weekly retch, I gave this a 6 out of 5. So yeah, 5 out of 5 in all 4 categories is not too surprising here. I didn't want to start on a perfect book, but it's kind of a perfect book, so I got to give it what it is. So feeling, it made me laugh a ton. It made me empathize with the characters a ton. There are some struggles that some of these characters go through, and I think you really do empathize with them throughout, even when their motivations change maybe a little bit. And yeah, I think everything that Joe wanted me to feel at certain times, angry or stressed or sad, I think he nailed it. I think he really did a great job of conveying those emotions. So 5 out of 5. So now my spoiler-free score and sell. So basically the scores, I would add those all up and average them, which the average out of 4 or 5 out of 5s is a 5 out of 5. So I'm giving Best Served Cold a 5 out of 5. Perfect book for me. Yeah, I don't really have too much to say other than it just worked for me in every way. I loved it. I think. Well, let me do my sell and then get into some spoilers. So my selling point, I wrote, which we kind of talked about this with the appeal. If you like the idea of fantasy Kill Bill, but with the addition of a motley crew of morally gray / maybe bad characters that have the some possibility of growth, I think you will love this book. I think you'll love this book. So yeah, that is my spoiler-free thoughts, very brief, on Best Served Cold. So now I'm going to move into spoiler territory. So spoilers. If you've not read Best Served Cold, don't go on. Don't go on. Just go read the book. So now let's go into spoilers. So we're going to go back through B.A.R.F. We're going to re-B.A.R.F. And I'm going to go into spoilers. So, believable. I'm just going to I've got some notes laid out, so I'm going to go through those notes. So, not in any particular order. I think Monza's arc with Benna and how he does such a great job where so Benna's, I probably am realizing now I should have gone over the plot in the spoiler free, but I didn't, and I'm not going to record it again. So if you're here, you already know what the plot is, but in the beginning, Benna is Monza's brother. Monza's our main character. Benna is brutally murdered, and by this group with Duke Orso, and they try to kill Monza too, throw her off the edge of like this cliff, but she survives, and that's why she's taking revenge. And so Monza, you start to get these little backstories at the beginning of every part of the book. There's a little page and a half of backstory of Monza and Benna's life, and you're really rooting for Benna because her brother, who she loves, they're very close, is wrongfully murdered, and they try to murder her as well. But in typical Joe Abercrombie fashion, the more you learn about Benna, the less you like him, because he's kind of you find out that he's the reason why she is in this position. You find out at the end that he actually was working to overthrow Orso, and like, so Orso didn't just kill Benna and try to kill Monza just because he got power hungry or they were a threat. It's because Benna was actively working to overthrow Orso behind Monza's back, and Benna kind of ran things and did a lot of things behind Monza's back without telling her, and then convinced her it was the right thing. So it's such an interesting thing because this whole time, that's the point of the story, right? Is the revenge worth it? Is that enough? Because at the end of this story, you kind of find out that it's not super justified. And so now everything Monza has gone through and put all these other people through has kind of been for nothing, and not for nothing, but not as much as you think, because in the beginning you're rooting for it, right? So I love that. I love the slow dishing out of the truth throughout the entire book. I thought that was great. Shivers. Let's talk about Shivers. Man, if you read the First Law trilogy, I did know going into this book that some of the characters might show up. I didn't know it would be in this large of a fashion. Like Shivers, and I certainly didn't expect Shivers, but I loved Shivers, and his arc was so good. He just wants to be a better man. And yeah, I totally got why he why he did what he did, and he kind of turned at the end on Monza because, yeah, she ruined him. She completely ruined him. He just wanted to be a good man, and she essentially just convinces him not to be. And the whole torture scene where he loses an eye, that's the major turning point for him, and it's brutal. But I loved his arc. I thought his arc was great, especially with their ending as well, where she sets him free. I thought that was a great ending. I also, in the last point, I forgot to. Oh no, yeah. So talking about Monza, going back to Monza, yeah, we just talked about this. Her forgiveness of Shivers at the end, I thought was great. I also thought her struggle with drugs was really well portrayed. And she has that scene, the classic freak out scene that you see in the movies where everything kind of comes to a head, and they're sitting in their car and they're banging their steering wheel and they're just like, ah, she has that moment, but it worked. She realized that the drugs were, ruining her life, and so she rids herself of that. And I thought that was a really powerful moment, and it felt very believable for me. Some other characters that I loved. I mean, I loved all the characters, but Morvier and Day's relationship, I loved it. So good, and kind of like father figure. It never felt creepy to me at all. It felt very like father, daughter, or mentor, mentee kind of thing. It really did. So I liked that. I thought they balanced each other out really well. I didn't listen to the audiobooks, but she gave me very like Harley Quinn vibes. Just kind of very bubbly and like, yeah, I liked their relationship, and I really liked their kind of final confrontation. Just the, he says over and over, caution first always. And that she takes that, and Monza plants this seed that Morvier is going to basically sell her out. And so she is being cautious of that, and it kind of backfires because she tries to kill Morvier, and then Morvier double betrays her, and it's just kind of a gotcha moment. But I love that he feels that consequence for the rest of the book, and I think he thinks he did the right thing, but he also hates that he had to do it because, yeah, I think she was like a daughter to him. So really love their relationship. And speaking of father-daughter relationships, Koska and Monza, to me, that also gave me father-daughter, even though I think Koska maybe has other intentions a little bit. Not too much, though. I think it's playful, but yeah, just Koska in general. I thought he was an excellent character. I did have a feeling that he would be back soon, and I am so glad that he was because, man, what a great character. I love Koska and his struggle. All these characters have struggles. His struggles with with alcohol and being an alcoholic and just having purpose. Loved him. Loved him and Monza. I thought they had a great uh, kind of just relationship. I thought they worked really well together. Shanked was the one that had a bit of a hard time loving his ending with him rescuing Monza, but intrigued to find out more. So yes, Shanked was really interesting. It's even more interesting if you haven't read the first law because I don't think they make it super clear. I'm assuming he is an eater, and so he eats the flesh of other people and has kind of like supernatural powers in the sense of like every time you see him, it becomes very like Matrix like. Time slows down and he just destroys everybody in like 2 seconds. But in his time, he's able to run around. They're just barely moving. So really interesting character. And the whole time, you'd see him a little bit, then he'd disappear for a while. And then you'd see him a little bit. And he's just kind of always just behind them. And I just kept thinking like, what? How is this going to get resolved? Like, who is this guy? And how is this going to get resolved? And then kind of at the end, he just if you find out that he was the guy that rescued Mons off the mountain and kind of fixed her up and helped her survive, that she kind of and got her addicted to drugs, and then she just pieced out. She didn't like the vibe, so she pieced out. And so he comes, and the whole time you're thinking that he's hunting her because he meets with Duke Orso, and that's the setup. But in reality, he then changes. He wants to save Monza because hold on. There's layers here. So it implies that he's like an ex-apprentice of Baez maybe, and Baez is allied with Duke Orso. Now Shanked doesn't like Baez. He's the ex-apprentice of him, hates Baez. So as soon as Orso wanted to kill Monza, then Shanked was like, well, I'm going to do the opposite of that. So he saves Monza instead. And I do feel a little conflicted on that, just a little bit. I just wish maybe we got a little bit more. I'm certain that we are going to get more of Shanked, but for the rest of the book feeling so self-contained, like there are parts of the book where it feels like there are other things going on in the world with the ongoing war of the oh my gosh. I'm blanking on the there's two like big powers that are going on that happened in the first Law trilogy with Baez and Khalul and the Gurkish. That's what it is. The Gurkish and the Kingdom. I'm blanking, but that it's there and it's present, and there are some real consequences to that in this story. But I do feel like other than that, you really can read this as like a standalone. But Shanked is the only one that I'm like, I just wish we knew a little bit more with that, before that reveal, or even after the reveal, to just kind of justify it a little bit more. That's my biggest gripe with the book, and it still doesn't bother me that much. I thought it was great, and really at the end of the day, it's just politics, right? And Shanked was like, well, I am going to go after Monza. Oh, just kidding. You want to kill Monza? Well, I don't like the person you're working for, so I'm not going to, now I'm going to save her. And maybe that is all there is to it. But yeah, that was probably my biggest gripe. And then I put down my favorite character and my least favorite character. Favorite character was Koska. Love Koska. I love his mantra, a drink, a drink, a drink. I love that he overcame that, and that was a big moment for him, except for he does revert back at the end, and I think that's also true of Joe Abercrombie, and I think that feels real. I think I hear a lot of complaints about Joe Abercrombie that there's no growth in his characters, and I completely disagree. I think there is growth, but I think sometimes that growth doesn't stick, and I feel like that's believable, right? Think about people trying out habits. Like that's why New Year's resolutions are a thing. It's like, yes, there can be growth, but sometimes you revert a little bit, and not everything sticks. So to me, that just makes it more believable. So Koska's my favorite character. I don't know why he gives me like Captain Jack Sparrow vibes. I don't know why, but he does. And yeah, I thought he was a great character in this. And yeah, he's my favorite character. My least favorite character was probably Vitari. I liked Vitari. I don't really know if I felt like Koska, it felt like it needed to be Koska. Vitari, she's also from the First Law trilogy. I don't really think it needed to be her. From what I can remember, nothing really stood out like, oh, this makes sense why he chose to bring Vitari back for this role. I thought she was fine. She just kind of pieces out halfway through when the party splits up. But even before that, she didn't have any too significant. Like, she was always my least favorite character of all the ones, part of the Motley crew. So I didn't hate her or anything. I just think she was kind of a little vanilla. So yes, those are my spoiler thoughts for the believable section. Spoiler thoughts for appeal. How interesting and appealing was the book? I loved getting to see characters from the First Law trilogy. That to me that made it even more appealing. I think again, like I said, you certainly can read this as a standalone, but it is fun to be like, oh, like knowing that. Well, I guess I won't spoil too many things from the First Law trilogy, although I do think it does inherently spoil some things. I don't think they're big enough to where you would maybe even remember if you went backwards. I think he kind of just mentions them so nonchalantly that it's not like a huge point like drawing attention to it or anything. But I did like getting to see some characters like Shivers. I mean, like, to me, I think that took a character that I wasn't in love with in the First Law trilogy and made him a real star in this book. So that was very fun. Some other things that were appealing, the variety from part to part. Man, it felt like, it's a revenge tale, right, at its heart. But every part felt a little different. There was like a siege during a part. There was like a heist almost with the infiltration of the bank. There was just like a torture sequence. There was like a party where they all go undercover. I don't know. It just felt like each one, when I first started and we got through the first part, I was like, because she kills the first person. I think it's Gaba. I think that's the first person she kills, and she just kind of like mutilates him and tortures him. And so that part ended, and it was good. And I was like, are we just gonna do this for, 6 more people, or because it seemingly would get old. But no, I mean, right into part 2. I think part 2 is the bank, and you get right into the heist nature of it. And then you get to the party, and then you get to the siege, and even coming back at the end. I'm trying to think. There's one more, Ganmark, where Shivers like betrays the group, and then brings him back. I would say that's maybe my least favorite part of them all. And then the gathering back in Talons, where everyone hates Orso now. Every part felt so different. And I thought that was really impressive. And I also think it's appealing. It keeps the pace going. It keeps me interested. And yeah, so that was appealing. And then morally gray characters, maybe. I mean, almost arguably just bad characters. But I think they all have morals, especially like Shivers, right? Shivers, he wants to be a good man. And Monza during the bank, the plan is they want to kill the 7 people that contributed towards the death of Benna and the attempt on Monza. But the bank results in the deaths of many people, and Monza is pissed. She is not happy about that because that was not the goal. And Morvir was kind of, Morvir's like, bro, that's what you hired me for. Like, we got the guy. Like, I'm not going to take risks to make sure that he's the only person we kill or whatnot. So I do like there's some morality. I think just looking at Monza and Shiver's relationship with like their back and forth, he ends up hating her, but also still seemingly being in love with her because of the torture. And she feels so much guilt because of that. They don't talk. I don't know. Just, I think, appealing is just character work. It's just so good. So that's my appeal. Spoiler thoughts. Now, rhythm. This will probably be the longest one because we're actually talking about plot and stuff. Characters and plot will probably likely be the longest ones. So, spoilers. I kind of talked about a little bit already. I liked how they moved from each different parts of the country or continent, I guess. I think maybe they are their own little countries and They're just on a different continent. But I like how they moved from place to place. We got a new setting each time. We got a new type of story each time. So that was great. Each kill felt unique. I thought the kills were great. The first one's a little boring, I guess, but still brutal. I thought, Joe Abercrombie's writing is so good that the gory parts they don't seem like ham-fisted or anything. They just feel real and they're blunt, and then they get it over with. But you feel it. So yeah, I thought that was great. I'm trying to think what my favorite kill was. I mean, even the bank where they just like poison the ledgers, where they lick their fingers to turn their pages, and that was it. That was cool. The water wheel where it's funny because I kept thinking about he's wearing like this cape, and as soon as there is a part like right before with Gammark, he's riding in to betray or to ambush Monza, and he mentions that the cloak he's wearing is just it's a little long, and he's like tripping on a little bit, and I'm like, oh yeah, here we go. It's the Incredibles where you should never wear a cape, never wear a cape, and yep, he gets the old cape treatment with the water wheel. And that's another part with morality, right? Monza struggles with that. She tries to save him, and just at the last minute, she's not even done getting her revenge, and she's kind of not wanting to go on with it. She's struggling with that. But his kill felt good. I loved Orso's death. It felt very Kill Bill, kind of just like, at that point, she doesn't even want to do it really, but she has to. And his death, I love when villains don't die dramatic deaths. It wasn't dramatic at all. It was just like, oh, so that's how it feels, and then he dies. But I thought that was great. Loved that. The giant statue sword impaling. Who does it impale? Maybe that's Ganmark, and I'm misremembering their names. It's been about a week and a half since I finished the book, so I'm hoping from now on I will record these a little sooner, so everything's a little more fresh. That's why I took so many notes. But yeah, that death was great too. All right, so that's talking about how the kills felt unique. Cardades, that's the last one. Now, everything that could go wrong did go wrong from the staged duel of the Bloody Nine and the Feared, with that moment where Shivers realizes, like, wait, aren't we supposed to be acting? But yeah, he's not acting. And when Friendly freaks out on the guys gambling, and everything with Monza and the King, it's just everything that goes wrong. That could go wrong does go wrong, but in such a fun way. And you kind of know going in, right? Like, you know something's going to go wrong. Otherwise, these types of books wouldn't be fun if they just went in and executed the plan perfectly. So you kind of know. I don't think he's surprising anybody, really. I think there are certain surprises throughout the story, but that's not what Joe's trying to do, I don't think. Talked about the heist feel of the infiltration of Valentin Balkbank. The pivotal moment for me with Shivers getting his eyeball burned out was brutal. I wasn't expecting that. And I just kept thinking, like, man, how are they going to get out of this? But Koska, I did foresee Koska just because, they're trying to figure out how to get into this area. And so they're planning on getting in there dressed up as Orso's men so that when Ganmark brings his crew in, they can betray Ganmark and kill him. But the people they're sieging find their gear and think that they're working for Orso, so they torture them. And originally when they're trying to figure out how to get in, Koska's like, well, they owe me a favor. I'll just go to the door and be like, hey, I'm here for dinner. You owe me a favor. And they'll let us in. Everyone's like, no, they won't. Come on, Koska. They're not going to do that. And so, of course, that's exactly what's going to work. And it does work. And so I kept thinking, like, oh, he's going to show up in the 11th hour and rescue them. But no, Shivers gets his eyeball melted out by, like, a brand. And it's brutal. And Mons has to watch it. And it's just such a turning point for their relationship because they're happy. They're getting everything done. They're banging. They're having a good time. And then, at that moment, Shivers is... the whole I want to be a good man act is gone. And he tells her, like, it should have been you that they did this to. And yeah, it's just brutal. His character changes, and it was really interesting because he starts like I thought it was gonna go one way because he starts like seeing and hearing the voices of like Logan Nine Fingers and Bethid and a couple other people, and I was like, oh man, is this gonna like unlock some personality disorder or something within Shivers? It doesn't seem like it did, but I thought that could have been cool. But yeah, he definitely turns into a bad guy at that at that moment. Like bad for you as the reader. Like, oh, there's gonna be some conflict here, which I thought was great. And then yeah, of course, Koska does show up, but it's just too late. Too late for that. He does save Monza from getting her eye burned out, though, I guess. So great, great pivotal moment, I think, in the story. I thought one of the one of the more interesting scenes for me was Joe Abercrombie managed to intertwine two concurrent sex scenes without you realizing it for the first 3/4 of those sex scenes. You think it's all one. You think the battle's over. Shiver and Mons are they're at least I did, and Bree did. He writes it in a way that you think it's just Shivers and Monza. They're back to banging, and then 3/4 of the way through, Monza calls him the Duke of Delay, and right after Shivers says like Carlo Dan Eider, and you're like, what? I just read two sex scenes that were going on at the same time, and it just was crazy to me. Especially, I will say, these are graphic sex scenes that we were not prepared for, and I was not prepared to read out loud to my girlfriend. It was funny. It was funny, but know that going in, there are graphic. Well, actually, don't know it going in because you've already read it. So, yeah, I just thought it was interesting. I thought it was done in a. I don't know if tasteful is the right word because I think it's probably not super tasteful, but like again, it just felt believable. It didn't feel like sex for the sake of sex. They had to put in a sex scene. It just felt like that was something they did as characters, and yeah. But I thought that was a nice little twist to it of the whole two at the same time, and trick you into thinking you're only reading one prolonged sex scene. So I thought that was very interesting. The slow dishing out of Benna and Monza's backstory I thought was excellent. Koska's death got me. It got me. He dies halfway through, and it didn't get me for that long, right? And I think that's the point. Koska dies, and within the next 20 pages, Friendly pieces out, and Friendly and Koska are close, and Friendly sees someone he recognizes and makes him really happy. It's like, okay, well, it's Koska. So, but man, those 20 pages when I thought he was dead, I was sad. I thought Koska brought a lot to the story, and yeah, I'm glad that he wasn't dead. So I'm gonna sip. Okay, and then I mentioned here, I talked a little bit about it earlier. The only part I didn't like for the plot was the battle at Aspria. So I put that I liked what happened in it. A lot of betrayal, and the Thousand Swords got paid by one party, but then they got paid by the other party more. So then they were just kind of bystanders, and all that was interesting. But the actual battle moments with like when Monza and Shivers go in, it's just too long for me. I think there is no consequence, right? When a battle can be going on, but when I'm just kind of with the people on the outskirts of the battle and they're talking about like the politics of the battle, that's exciting to me. But when it's just Shivers and Monza killing people for like 15 pages, I just wish it was a little shorter. And like I said, I think Joe does a really good job of keeping those things precise. I thought this was the one time I thought it could have been tightened up just a smidge. So not enough to knock it a point by points or anything, just something I noticed. So those are all of my thoughts for the rhythm and pacing overall. Again, 5 out of 5. I thought the pacing and plotting were excellent, top notch. Yeah, no real critiques other than that one little bit. Feeling. What did this book make me feel, if anything? I already gave it a 5 out of 5, so made me feel something. Yeah, I wrote empathize with Koska and his struggle with alcohol, Monza with her struggle with drugs and revenge in general, and then Shivers with trying to be a better man, while also, I could empathize with them, but at the same time, it can make me feel angry at them for not going the way that I wanted it to go. You know, sometimes you want to grab a character and shake them by the shoulders and be like, no, no. And I definitely felt that way in this book for these three characters. And, you know, I think that's the point. Again, right? So I put those still believable because, yeah, I do. Drugs, be it alcohol, be it, you know, drugs, or even being addicted to, yeah, her idea of revenge, or even Shivers with being addicted to the idea of being a good man. I think some people get blinded by that, and especially with drugs and alcohol, right? It's hard to break that. And so I thought all of their struggles felt real, and yeah, it made me feel for them. So that's one point. Next is the humor. It's one of Abercrombie's strong suits, and then yeah, particularly the way he uses it in his relationships between characters. So yeah, there's almost like situational humor because of what you know or because of characters' inner dialogue or inner monologue that yeah, they're just funny parts. One that I wanted to point out was Morvir, who's this master poisoner who nobody trusts, rightfully so, because he could kill anybody at any point, and he's already kind of like not poisoned Shivers, but when Shivers and Monza go to meet Morvir for the first time, he like paralyzes them so they could talk essentially without harming them or anything. So Shivers he does not trust Morvir at all, and so Morvir's feeling down. He's feeling not part of the group. And so while the crew goes out to do something, he's like, I'm going to stay home and rest. But in his mind, he's like, I'm going to make them like me. I want to be liked. So he cleans up the whole house. He cooks this beautiful dinner, and they come home, and he's like, hey, you know, I felt bad about the way I've acted, and I wanted to do something nice for you all. So I cooked you this nice dinner. And, you know, everyone is like, I think I'll pass, Morvir. Thank you. And he's just like, what? I just don't understand. I tried to cook you a nice dinner. And, you know, everyone's like, no, we think you poisoned it. You're a poisoner. And that's what you do. And we don't trust you. And I just thought that part, because you really do. He just wants to do a nice thing. And it just backfires. And I thought that was hilarious. So yeah, a lot of situational humor like that. But I do think there's a lot of humor in his dialogue as well. So it's just one of his strong suits. For my taste, I think it lands pretty perfectly every time. I put Monza's breakdown scene felt moving. Like I talked about it a little bit earlier with Monza's character. Yeah, her out on the porch when she throws the pipe. And it's just like that comb, everything's built up to that moment for her, and she needs to either, you know, give in or rid herself of that burden, and she does manage to overcome and rid herself of that burden. And I felt that. I thought it was a moving scene. And then yeah, the last thing I put was the gut punch of Shivers saying it should have been you to Monza about the torture. And yeah, to me, you felt that. Like that's not something I thought that he would say out loud to her. So the fact that he did, and it haunts her, and it would haunt anybody, I think, really, especially because of the guilt. You know, it's her fault that happened, that he's in that situation. So I thought that was, a pretty big gut punch. And then the last thing I wanted to say, I didn't write this down, but I did think about it. It's not really in feeling, just maybe in rhythm and execution. I think it's really impressive to me that Joe Abercrombie, not only does each character have their own voice and feel like their own character, but even with the reading. So like I could start a chapter, or sometimes the chapters were broken into different POVs, but like even reading POVs, I can start. I know who it is. I know whose POV it is before you even read whose it is because of the way it's written. It's like Morvir, he's pretentious. He's got a super large vocabulary, so even his POVs are all with that type of writing. Or Shivers, it's got some sayings that don't feel natural to like the English language because it's northern and stuff like that. And I think that's super impressive, and it doesn't feel jarring at all. To me, it was a nice little touch, and I think he's done that pretty consistently, right? Like I think with the first saw with oh my gosh, what's his name? I'm blanking. The torturer. Oh my gosh, can't think of his name. He's the only character that does real like inner monologuing. And so like as soon as you start a chapter, if it's with an inner monologue, and you're like, oh, it's blank. I don't remember his name, but yeah. So let me go to the my final. Actually, I don't think I am going to do my score and stuff because I did that before. There's no point in me selling this book to you because, like we said, you've already read it. You're in the spoiler section, or maybe you haven't, but I've already done my sell. So that's really it. 5 out of 5. I call it a 6 out of 5 book for me. Better even than the First Law. I've got no real gripes other than like a couple little nitpicks, but to me not enough to bring it down much at all. I can't wait to read the Heroes. So, some people I hear say that this is their favorite. Some people say the Heroes is their favorite. To me, they've all been so good that and his writing has improved even from the First Law trilogy to the Best Served Cold. There was a pretty significant improvement in his writing, and so I'm just so excited that I get to read 2 more of the standalones and then a whole other trilogy. And yeah, so Best Served Cold, 5 out of 5 for me. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully in the next couple reviews, I'll get into a better flow, maybe a more natural flow, or if I will try to remember next time to say the plot, in the spoiler-free section, because I'm realizing now that someone, if they do watch this and they don't know what the book is about, I will not help them at all in the beginning. So that's something I will try and remedy next time. And yeah, hopefully the B.A.R.F system worked out okay. 5 out of 5 B.A.R.Fs for this one. And yeah, thanks so much. See you next time. Goodbye.